How's it going, gamers? And how is your week going? I am just wrapping up the weekend, just fixing a ton of my old retro gaming systems. I've been happy to kind of get my CDX back up and running, and also my Super Nintendo has video now and sound. So I've been busy just repairing a lot of my retro games back to life. But yeah, this week, let's do a recap on our discussion here with all the latest gaming news that has happened, and there's definitely a lot to talk about. So if you got some time, this particular podcast, whether you're listening on online or on YouTube, is going to be a lengthy one, just like our other podcasts. So normally it lasts about 30 to possibly 1 hour. But we're going to go over some gaming topics and give you my perspective on it. If you're new here, go ahead and hit like if you like the content. And if you are not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe to support the channel. As we grow through the gaming news, I also like to interact with my guests. So if you guys want to make comments down below, I'll be able to respond back appropriately once I post this on YouTube. So yeah, let's start up the recap of the week with several news for all three companies: Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and a little bit of PC. I wouldn't say PC gaming, but just regular gaming news, right? Let's go with Nintendo. So Nintendo this week surprised everyone with Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light. So this game never came to the US, so they're actually doing a Western translation of the game for the US. Now this game was launched on the Japanese eShop as part of the Nintendo Online. So the Japanese audience, and they got this game a while back, but for the U.S. audience, this is the first time that they're translating it into the U.S. In English actually for the U.S. market. I'm pretty sure other markets as well too. But it is releasing December 4th. It's only $5.99 digital, so it's not that bad. But this is a limited release, so you have until the 31st of March of next year before they remove it from the digital eShop store. But the one exciting news of this announcement is if you guys are a collector like myself, which I collect a ton of different games from all different platforms, they are going to be releasing a 30th anniversary special edition for $49.99. Which when I saw the special edition and the details on what it was, it's not a bad price for what you're getting for $49.99. So it includes a nostalgia stylized physical NES box replica, right? And then they also have an NES game pack art piece that's like a clear piece of plastic in the shape of the cartridge, and you also get a protective sleeve, which is pretty cool. It comes with a hardbound art book, which is about 222 pages, so a lot of artwork regarding Fire Emblem, and then you also get a Nintendo Power fold-out map, so bringing you back to the 80s when you would open up those big Nintendo Power posters of different games and things like that. And then of course you get a digital code to download the game. So yeah, I've been looking at some of the online retailers, and I kind of missed out on some of the pre-orders that went up right away, but I'm hopeful that they'll get some more in. But yeah, definitely something that I'm picking up. I've been I wouldn't say a huge fan of Fire Emblem, but I've played their games and I do enjoy them. This is the first one ever released back in the 8-bit days, so it's going to be rough around the edges if you're not a old gamer like myself that has played games since the early 80s. I'm happy at least they localize it. So what does this all mean for Nintendo's back catalog of games that never made it to the US? Does this mean that we might see other things in the future, especially as they're kicking off 30th anniversaries, 25th anniversaries, things like that when games are coming up? It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Right now, the clamoring after they announced this is the internet's all talking about Mother 3 and whether or not they're going to localize that. But Mother 3, I'll give you my opinion on this. There's been a lot of noise about Mother 3 all the way since Reggie was the president of Nintendo of America, And the one thing about all this is that Nintendo, they make these business decisions on what to do and how to build out their brand. The Fire Emblem release of this is really to build out the Fire Emblem brand within the West. It's already well known outside of the West, in Japan and in other regions, but the West, they're trying to build up the brand, and this is why they're releasing this to keep it fresh in everybody's mind, right? So the thing about Mother 3 is that there's a small vocal audience or group that is clamoring about this, but I don't know how much support, if Nintendo did decide to release this in the U.S. and localize it, are they going to make in doing so? And for Nintendo, I mean, they can easily make their money back on bringing Mother 3 over to the U.S. But I think what people are not looking at here is that Nintendo has had a huge long list of franchises that they've owned, and they've always utilized their franchises to bolster their brand. And that's the thing here is with Mother 3, it's a lot of people might be talking about it on social media, but end of the day, Nintendo knows that releasing Mother 3 in the US is probably not going to bolster their brand within the gaming community. So they're going to keep it pretty much status quo. So I don't really, I wouldn't hold my breath on a localization of Mother 3. I would probably look at other legacy products that Nintendo has that they're trying to rebuild that brand within the Western audience. And right now, all the companies, whether it's Sony or Microsoft, they know the Western audience. The U.S. market is the biggest market from a console gaming perspective. So it's all about building your brand. It's all about maintaining that brand, right? So, I think, that's my 2 cents on that. And then let's move on while we're still talking Nintendo and talking about business decisions. This week, Michael Proctor, he's an analyst. He kind of stir up some conversations on social media when his comments were talking about Nintendo, and I'm paraphrasing here, talking about how Nintendo should probably give up on the hybrid model and just focus on the Lite, because it's a lower cost at $199. Most people are playing the Switch mobilely anyways. They're not playing it at home hooked up to the TV. So why not go all in with the Lite and just push as many units at a lower cost? And, it's funny because one of the things is if you guys have been around like myself, there's always going to be industry analysts that talks about game companies and what they should do, and they always think they're smart, but they're not running those multi-billion or trillion-dollar companies that are making the money, right? So it's always great that they do this. Even the fans do this. I myself will do this as well too, to kind of understand and dissect what their decisions are. But end of the day, they're making their own decisions because it's a business decision, and it ties around their strategy, right? So and the reason why I don't put a lot of weight into these type of conversations that these analysts or statements that they make regarding what a company should do or should not do. You also have to look back at the heyday of when Nintendo was just knocking out of the park with the Wii and getting that mass consumer market. There was a lot of analysts, including Michael here, that talked about, hey, Nintendo, you guys have had the Wii out for so long now. You need to have an HD version of the Wii. It'll sell even more, right? And guess what? Nintendo eventually released the Wii U, an HD version of the Wii that still could play Wii games but focus on HD, but with a different control scheme, and it wasn't that successful. So again, these industry analysts are to me, I treat them as if they're just another fanatic out there. They're gonna voice their opinions and their suggestions, and when they hit a target, they'll boast about how the companies are aligning with what the way they're thinking, but then when it doesn't make sense, they'll use some type of other excuse, right? But hey, it is what it is. He makes his money as an industry analyst at looking at other industries, and that's his comment on Nintendo. And I'll just leave it at that, guys. I think Nintendo is doing quite well. They're right now at a little bit over 60 million, I believe 62 million Switches globally, right? And they're on pace, and we're not even the holiday season yet. And even with the launch of the PS5 and the Xbox, I think Nintendo's going to pretty much corner the market with the availability of systems they're going to be producing this holiday season and the momentum that they have. And it wouldn't be that far-fetched to state that by the end of their fiscal year, which means that the Switch would have been out for a full 4 years in March of 2021, right? They are going to hit. I'm gonna, I'm guessing here, but I'm pretty sure they're on track right now to hit over 70 million units sold worldwide in 4 years. So based on the pace that they're hitting, you can look. It's looking like they're gonna hit almost PS4 targets, of over 100 million units, probably a little bit over 5 years. Probably 5.5 years in, or before they hit their 6 year mark, they're gonna be already past the PlayStation 4 install base. So that is a great feat in terms of what they're doing with the Switch, and just the popularity of the Switch, the fact that they're able to do the numbers, and they're on pace to do the numbers that Sony's doing in less time, which means that, hey, is there a potential for the Switch to hit, PS2 targets, right? PS2 was, I believe, 150 million. The reason the PS2 sold so much worldwide, it came at a time when PlayStation leveraged the DVD player on the PlayStation 2. So the PlayStation 2 was doubled as a DVD player and a gaming system. So a lot of households said, okay, if I'm going to buy a game system for my kid or for my teenager, I might as well buy the PlayStation 2 because I can play DVD movies as well too, and that's why they sold so many units. The PlayStation 2 did, compared to all the other PlayStations, right? And Sony was banking that the PS3 would do the same thing, and they never got to that high, attach rate. Even though PlayStation 3 ushered in Blu-ray, right? And that was the same strategy that Sony was trying to do, is to do the same thing they did with the DVD player, but with the Blu-ray player on the PlayStation 3. So, yeah, going back to Nintendo. Man, they're on pace to possibly even meet or exceed PlayStation 4 numbers, so that's good for them. And I think because they're on pace to do all this, the talks right now, even the last couple of years about a Switch Pro, it just doesn't make sense, right? Nintendo is gonna probably iterate, like they'll have a revision, and their revision is going to be a very minor upgrade. And because the thing is, you don't want to isolate your audience as you're building this momentum of selling Switch units, right? I mean, technically, can they release a Switch Pro? Yeah, because, if you think about the way the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox and how they had mid-generation systems, and developers were still able to develop for those systems and then just downgrade to the base units, right? So technically, Nintendo developers can do the same thing. They're used to developing it right now because they're doing both dock and undock mode, right? So it wouldn't be a stranger to the development team for doing that. But from a business decision standpoint, if you're already cranking out as many Switches as you are at full price of $299, do you bring out a Switch revision anytime soon? And if you do you make that revision the same base, or do you make that what people are supposedly calling a Pro, and then you reduce the price of everything else? So do you see, and put your comments down below and let me know, do you see that if Nintendo brings out a Switch Pro next year, would they make that Switch Pro $299 and bring the regular Switch down to like $250? Because maybe a $50 price point, you're probably not going to get too much more with the revision. Maybe you get more onboard storage. You're already getting better battery life with the last revision, right? So maybe a little bit better storage, maybe 4K support for media streaming, for upscaling. I mean, you can technically still kind of do a revision, and that's why I don't, from my opinion, if they do have a more powerful system, great for that. But I also have a feeling that they might be coming out with a smaller iteration of, hey, all your games on your Switch will work just the same. It's just it might upscale a little bit better on a 4K monitor at home, right? They might put a better chip in there, or activate it, because the Tegra 1 chip has the ability to do 4K. They just locked it, because they're trying to optimize it for battery life and performance, right? But if you release a Switch Pro or a Switch revision model and you make it $299, do you still keep the original Switch version and you either bring it down to $250 or bring it down to $199, and then the Switch Lite goes down to $149? Now, keep in mind, Nintendo doesn't like to drop prices. They rarely do so. It takes them years before they drop their prices down, and it really comes down to competition and how well the competitors are doing. Right now, the new next-gen games systems are $500, so they're still within, I would say, impulse buy at $299. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, guys. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think? I personally think that whatever the next Switch Pro for me would be the next big iteration of the Switch, which means they probably won't bring that out until they hit close to 100 million units, and then they'll still keep keep going with the Switch family. I have a feeling that their marketing strategy and their business strategy with the Switch is going to be similar to the iPhone infrastructure. So the whole platform of iPhone is iOS, right? So I believe Nintendo is going to make the Switch the new platform that they will iterate over time and time and time again. And what they're going to do is they're going to see what is the appetite of the gaming market to accept some of these iterations, whether they accept a new hardware refreshes every 2 years, because every single year is probably not going to bode well. It's not the cell phone industry where the cell phone works with other things, and you're using your cell phone for more than just making calls, right, and social media. So, and it's subsidized with ISP, and cellular providers and contracts and things like that. But I think what Nintendo is going to do is that now that they've had the Switch Lite, they revised the original Switch. That in 2021, or I'd be surprised that nothing comes out in 2021. Maybe 2022, that they have a new revision. But yeah, let me know what you think. I think right now the Switch is doing great. There's no need for them to do anything more other than to make it much more efficient to produce, to lower costs, and to make more profit from each system sell. And for one thing, I don't think you're going to see a price drop of the Switch. It's selling like crazy. So if anything, you'll see a pack-in game, digital pack-in game. You won't see anything else. And look at this holiday season, they're going to have a Switch with Fortnite. With Fortnite, which is a free title, but they're going to pack in some V-Bucks there. It's going to get a lot of kids asking their parents to get them a Switch. Yeah, I guarantee it, and that's smart business and marketing strategy behind that. So let's move on now. Let's go on to Sony and some of the news that hit Sony this week. And the biggest news is, we've been seeing a lot of, Xbox reviews and previews, early access to early production units. A few influencers have gotten the retail versions of the Xbox that they're unboxing and they're previewing. So this week, Sony finally have delivered the retail versions of the PS5 to media outlets in the U.S. Now, let me just state in the U.S. And a couple of influencers, YouTube influencers as well, that have some PlayStation 5, like Marquise and Austin Evans. But just keep in mind that the European market and outside the U.S., they haven't received their early preview units. I know a lot of people have been hounding Digital Foundry, and Digital Foundry is based in the UK or in Europe, so they haven't gotten their system yet. So chill. You guys just need to calm down a little bit, guys. It's just the US market because it is the biggest market that Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo is focusing on. So that's why it's good news that the media has it. I think now we're going to see honest feedback and play testing from the media outlets, from the YouTube influencers, because other than an embargo that Sony's going to put on certain releases of information, similar to how Microsoft did with the Xbox Series, at least now you're going to have some people that are going to be playing around with it, and already. If you guys, look at Austin Evans' YouTube video on the PlayStation 5 controller, he opened it up. He snapped it, kind of broke it a little bit as he unsnapped the controller, which is interesting. It didn't look like there was any screws. So when I get the controller and I open it up, I'm going to have to see, to do it carefully, because it looks like, Austin and his team just ended up snapping a couple plastic pieces that were trying to hold it together. But yeah, the controller looks like there's definitely a lot of tech put in there. They're definitely using bigger motors, haptic motors, than I thought they would. I thought they would use some smaller, efficient ones, but I'm guessing that if they, if you make it smaller, like Nintendo did with the Joy-Cons, you're probably paying a lot more for the smaller motors, the haptic motors, whereas the bigger motors probably will cost less and in volume, so that's why they probably did that. And maybe they did it also to kind of balance out the weight, because if you look at the Joy-Cons, they're not full-on controllers, right? So they need to be lightweight as much as possible, but these are full controllers, so it's a good balance. I think the interesting part is going to be the triggers and the housing that they built inside for the triggers in order to kind of simulate resistance or lockup. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how they do that. I did spot some locations where, other than a clean PCB board, there's a couple of wires soldered on the surface side of things of the controller. So yeah, it has two mics. So definitely one mic for standard use, the other mic for noise cancellation. I think, I mean, it's next gen. Everybody's gonna price their accessories a little bit higher. But I think if you guys haven't been around the business of these hardware manufacturers, they're going to make most of their margin on the accessories. So are the controllers worth 69, 79 bucks? 69 on the PlayStation, 79, for like the Joy-Cons for Nintendo. But, they'll state that it's a lot of technology in one piece, but you know what, they buy in such volume that they make a ton of margin on the accessories. That's how they offset a lot of their losses, or how they break even with the hardware in pushing the accessories. They sell you an extra controller, a camera, a charger, and things like that. Or even like a media remote, right? So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I thought that was pretty cool. Can't wait to get my system. I'm definitely gonna open up the controller as well and see if I can spot out, they're I just want to view it from an engineering perspective, like how their engineers design the controller. Because I mean, you look at most other controllers, they're very basic PCB boards controlling the input of the buttons, and then just having a standard rumble motor, right? So when you have technologies like haptic feedback with the haptic motor that Sony has, or even the Nintendo has with their Joy-Cons, it's always interesting to see how they position that in order to get it to do what it needs to get done, right? So news on that. A bunch of systems out there, so I think that's going to be good. I mean, the hype train for the information for both the PlayStation 5 and Series X is going to be ratcheted up in the next couple of weeks, right, leading up to launch. You're going to get a lot more information. We're going to get a lot more information, a lot more things to talk about. The only other comment I wanted to make is I still want to state it. In my opinion, because I've owned so many systems, I hate it when companies go like with a light color system or plastic, or whether it's gray or white, because over time, man, those plastics degrade because of UV exposure, just the standard elements of use, and yeah, I'm not a big fan of white. I'm already seeing, other than trying to de-yellow my old SNES and my Nintendo systems, my NES, but my Wii and even my 360, the white controllers on those platforms are yellowing. It's deteriorating, and yeah, I'm just not a big fan of white anything, whether it's controllers or systems. I think if these companies can keep it black, and matte black, not glossy black, because even the glossy black you can still scratch it, and you've seen that with both the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3. I love the aesthetic of the PlayStation 2 where it was a matte black, and that was. I was hoping that they would stick to utilizing that same type of a theme or concept for all their systems. But yeah, I'm just gonna, I don't know. When I get my PlayStation 5, I might just pull out the cover shells there and maybe dip them in a different color or something like that. It's just, yeah, I'm not a fan of white. Just from my perspective, that's my opinion. You guys tell me what you guys think of the PlayStation 5. Are you a fan of the white color? Do you wish they had options, or do you wish that they even have launched it with a black version of the system, right? So yeah, I just want to kind of throw my 2 cents in on that, since I was watching the video from Austin Evans where he was taking the controller apart, and I'm just looking like, yeah. And then I looked over at my 360 controller. I'm like, look at how bad that controller has deteriorated, and even the Wii controllers, right? So yeah, moving on. The other thing is that came out this week was more footage of Miles Morales. So this game is looking very, very good. I think, it's definitely, from my opinion, and this is my opinion, it's definitely a huge evolution of the PS4 version. Now that they're utilizing the PlayStation 5 with additional horsepower, they can draw the higher resolutions, the higher details. And the 30 frames per second mode is going to be the mode that's going to have ray tracing and probably the most visually looking version of the Miles Morales game, and 30 frames per second is still not bad. If they, Sony and Insomniac did a really good job with the PlayStation Spider-Man game and locking that at 30 frames. So if it's 30 frame consistent, it's still very playable at 30 frames. I think for me, playing so many PC games at high frame rate, I just love the 60 frames, just the smoothness of it, the fidelity, and the game is kind of like it's not fast enough pace where you like a Call of Duty or like a fighting game that you need that huge response time, but it's also not a slow game either. It's not like a traversal game like an RPG, right? So, the 60 frames, it's gonna be interesting. I can't wait to play it in 60 frames and see what the sacrifices are. If you guys haven't seen my reaction video or comparisons of the last footage, the first footage actually of that when Sony show of Spider-Man, that I noticed a lot of things being degraded for 60 frames per second performance mode. Not a lot of 3D rendering with certain crowds and vehicles and things like that in order to keep 60 frames per second. Reflections were not ray traced, so there's definitely going to be a huge balance, and it's going to be interesting to see. And for me, I'm going to question whether the delta between 30 and 60 frames from a visual fidelity is that much. If it's huge, and it's a big, huge jump, not only in dynamic resolution 4K that they're doing, because they're not doing, full consistent 4K with Spider-Man. It looks like it's going to be dynamic 4K, which is fine because there's going to be certain scenes that it's really going to be pushing the system. So I rather them keep the 30 frames per second lock and get as much as they can with 4K. And I don't think a lot of people are going to notice too much. I mean, once you get 1440p or higher, you're not going to see too much of a difference. You're not unless you're the type like a Digital Foundry or myself where you're going to pause the game and go, "Oh my God, look at that tree. Look at how crappy that texture on that tree looks." Right? You're not going to do that. You're going to play the game because it's fun, right? So yeah, let me know in the comments for the few of you guys that are going to get a PlayStation 5. What are you guys playing on? Are you guys going to be playing in performance mode, or are you guys going to play it in fidelity mode? I think I'm kind of torn between both because I am leaning towards the performance mode at 60 frames. But like I said, if the delta on the visual is too great, going to 30 frames, then I'm going to go to 30 frames. And the visual fidelity, so far from what I'm seeing at 30 frames, looks really impressive. And again, 30 frames isn't a bad frame rate to play a game in. Just wish that they could have done it in 60 frames. So that's just my opinion. But yeah, let me know what yours is and comment down below, and I'll be happy to talk back and forth between you guys. And then lastly, in the Sony front, the marketing machine is cranking now. They got all the medias with all the review units, and then they finally announced Travis Scott is joining the PlayStation team as a strategic partner, which kind of goes to a few weeks ago when he, showed a picture of himself with a controller. So, I mean, this was, pretty much, planned. It's the marketing team behind Sony. They're definitely leveraging the influence of a person like Travis Scott to influence people in his world that follow him, that look to his influence to the things that they pick up. I mean, that's just how it is. That's how marketing is. Celebrity endorsements, man. That's how a lot of these companies build out their brand over time. Is celebrity endorsements. They want to make you feel like what you're owning is cool and hip and high tech and all that stuff, and then these people are using it, that you should use it as well too. So it's just part of the marketing PR push that Sony's ramping up, and that's a good get for them, because he's definitely gonna have a lot of influence, and he's definitely gonna bring some things to the marketing tactics of what Sony's going to unleash with the launch of the PlayStation 5. And that's the thing, guys. When in business, you have to know how to separate strategy from tactics. The strategy is basically what's your end game, right? What do you want to accomplish, and your tactics is how do you get there? How do you get to your goal, right? So everything from a PR move, all the marketing stuff, it's all there. It's Sony's tactics on how to get to the strategy, which is the building of the PlayStation 5 brand. And already, if you guys haven't noticed, there's already 4K Blu-ray movies from Sony Pictures that also have the PlayStation 5 moniker on there. Because remember, in the PlayStation 4 days, Sony didn't they didn't allow the PlayStation to play Blu-ray 4K movies. Even though they had a Blu-ray player on there, they didn't make the PlayStation for the media entertainment. But now I think they're reversing with the PlayStation 5 because of the higher costs. Might as well make it a 4K Blu-ray and one of the best 4K Blu-ray players out there. So it's a good, again, it's a good tactic that they're using. And let me know if you guys have started seeing PlayStation 5 branding on some 4K Blu-rays out there that are owned or that are distributed by Sony Pictures, right? So it's already started. And talking about marketing and PR, now we're going to go over to Microsoft and the news of the week with Microsoft stuff. And let me just say, from somebody that's been in around corporate business, and I have several friends in the gaming industry. Microsoft has really, I guess, ever since their downfall with their hiccups with the launch of the Xbox One and with this new regime that Phil Spencer has taken over, I gotta say, whoever he put together from a marketing team for Microsoft or the PR team, they're understanding what they have to do out there with the social media audience, and their PR team is, to me, I think, is doing a great job because they're embracing. A good PR team embraces both the good and the bad, and they build a brand recognition from that, from that public relations interaction in social media. So like whether it's handling and managing the Twitter account, the TikTok account, the Instagram account, or whatever it is with PR releases and things like that, I think Microsoft's doing a good job because they have embraced the Xbox Series X meme of being a refrigerator. You saw that with Aaron Greenberg when they had, was it back in middle of the year when they had their third-party showcase and he was on a Zoom call and he literally had his refrigerator background with an Xbox refrigerator. And maybe that was a hint because Microsoft ended up creating an actual Xbox Series X refrigerator, fully functioning, a single door, full upright refrigerator that opens up. It has green lights in there. It makes a sound when you open up the door, and there's a Xbox power button that lights up. And the first person that got to really unveil this was Snoop Dogg. And for me, I thought it was like, wait, why is Snoop Dogg doing this? And why is he showing a refrigerator? Was he just making fun of Xbox, or did Xbox really give him one? And then slowly, as people were like, oh man, Snoop Dogg has a Series X refrigerator, and then iJustine posted her video on receiving the Xbox refrigerator and unboxing the box. It's again a great PR move. It gets people talking. iJustine has a ton of followers. Snoop Dogg has a ton of followers. And again, just like how Sony went with Travis Scott, Microsoft was ready with their PR team and marketing team to get the message out. And iJustine announced that they the whole Xbox refrigerator, there's only 3 that are made. So Snoop has one, she has one, and they're going to give away the third one in a contest. So what great way to drum up, and really take the meme and the lashing that Microsoft got with unveiling the Xbox Series X, look of the console, that they've embraced what people said about it and they accepted it. And I think that is really cool. A lot of companies don't really do that. They shy away, and they to me, it symbolizes a really good PR team, a really good marketing team that goes, hey, you know what? Why not take the news and the noise and turn it into our benefit? And that's what they did. And I think they did a really good job. I just want to kind of comment on that and how crazy that is, because trust me, if you had a chance to win an Xbox refrigerator the way they've designed it, you would want one because it would be a one of a kind, right? They've only made 3. It's like back then, if you guys ever watched Game of Thrones gave away an actual throne, via AT&T. And actually, one bit of tidbit, like one of my really good coworkers, his parents won that particular throne from AT&T, one of a few that was out there. So it's sitting somewhere in the Midwest in the backyard, and they've opened it up to their public for people to come in and take pictures of it. So again, the Xbox Series X with the refrigerator thing, great marketing, plan behind the PR team. I just wanted to kind of comment that. What do you guys think about the Microsoft, accepting the meme? Post your comments below and let me know, and I'll definitely interact with you guys on that. The next bit of Xbox news revolves the Series S, and it's I'm not like a lot of these other YouTubers that just try to take a headline and do a lot of these clickbaits when it comes to a lot of the gaming news. I want to have a thoughtful discussion on things that do hit. And to me, as a person that really loves the technology piece, when you hear about the Series S and why they're bringing it out, and is it a good value? Because at $100 less than the PlayStation 4 digital version, might as well pay the $100 and get the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 digital version. Why not go with a PS5? You have to understand from a business perspective, the mass consumer market, right? $100 is a big deal. $299 to $399, that's a big decision to make, especially if you're not a working adult and you're asking a parent or somebody to buy you a system to play some of the latest and greatest games on, right? So don't underestimate the price point, because that $299 price point is a huge mass consumer price point that's going to I guess connect with a lot of people out there. And just because you're hearing the noise on social media and on whether it's Twitter, on YouTube, it doesn't represent the mass market. And that $299 is going to be huge, because the way Microsoft is positioning that is that it's going to give you everything the Series X does without the 4K resolution, right? They're targeting it at 1440p and even 1080p, but you're still getting ray tracing, you're still getting the SSD. You're just going to get a smaller, onboard, SSD in terms of the 1 TB. You're getting 512, so half, right? So with that, they want to keep their marketing message very clean, so they don't confuse the 4K box with the 1440p 1080p box. But can the Series S do 4K? I'm pretty sure it can, especially if you're going to be running a lot of media off of that freaking box. If my new Chromecast with Google TV can do 4K streaming video, the Series S is going to do the same thing. It can do 4K, but what it's not going to do is do native 4K, right? And if it does do native 4K, it's going to be probably indie style games, because with games, if you're looking at AAA or AA games, it's probably going to be very challenging to get 4K native from that. So they're probably going to shoot 1440p as the native resolution and upscale. And that's the other thing, guys, is a lot of people don't realize that the Series S will upscale everything to 4K. It's the same thing as with the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X, where a lot of times you have native 4K, but then a lot of times it's checkerboarding, but it's still upscaled up to 4K. The S is going to do the same thing, and it's and already there's a couple of developers that have talked about pushing 4K native on the Series S, and that's fine, and those are indie developers like the Tourists. That will do that, and probably a few others too, because they're not really taxing on the GPU and they can do the native 4K on the S. But primarily the messaging that Microsoft's trying to convey is that they want to convey that it's everything the Series X is just a low resolution, not the high 120 frames 4K that the Series X and the PlayStation 5 is claiming, right? So yeah, I think it's interesting that people are talking about it, but I don't really see that being too much of a problem. I think it's for most of the mass consumer, they're gonna go and decide when it comes to buying the next system, oh, do I spend $299 or do I spend $499? And us as gamers, we know where the value is, but again, Microsoft's just shooting to see if they can get the mass consumer market on that, right? A very low entry point to get into next gen without having to pay $500 plus, right? And the fact that they have old accessories that work on the Series S and X bodes well for people that want to upgrade and not pay the high price of the Series X at $500. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about that. And then also talk about some other topics. Remote play is now available on iOS. So if you guys are new here, I have a remote play video that I showed how to set it up on Android with your Xbox, and this will be applied to the Series X as well. And then now they have Microsoft has released the iOS version of Remote Play. Now this is an xCloud. Remote Play is basically tethering a remote connection, a second screen like your phone or your tablet, to your console. So it's kind of like remote desktop, or kind of like how the Wii U was intended to do, where you had the gamepad but you still had to be tethered to the Wii U console. So it's just a second screen technology that's been around for the longest time. So Sony has it, Microsoft has it now. They fully updated it and fleshed it out for iOS and Android. So if you guys don't have it, go ahead and download it and try it out. If you guys need some help, look at my video on remote play on how to set that up on your Xbox as a tutorial on how to do that. But yeah, other than that, something that kind of ties into remote play is that the talks about the Xbox and a streaming stick, and this is pretty interesting that it was brought up in an interview, and it doesn't surprise me. So another video that I posted on my channel is around side loading the Game Pass app on the new Chromecast for Google TV, and I was able to side load that. It doesn't run perfect because the app isn't made for the Chromecast with Google TV, the new unit that I just purchased. But the fact that I got it running really shows promise that if Microsoft really wanted to invest in streaming sticks that are at a low entry point, this could be their mechanism or mechanism to really highlight xCloud and cloud gaming, and the fact that if you look at some of the business hints that Microsoft has been doing with Samsung, right, and the mobile, and the with the mobile phone having the Samsung mobile phone having Game Pass and the Xbox apps in there, I have a feeling, and this is just my guess here. It's nothing. It has been reported on. It's just my guess is that relationship with them and Samsung is only going to be strengthened further with possibility of the Samsung TVs having the native Xbox app in there too. So imagine if Remote Play and Game Pass was available on those Samsung TVs, right? Because right now next gen is going to require you to get HDMI 2.1 if you really want to take advantage of the true potential of next gen, which is 120 frames, 4K, or 120 frames at altogether. Most of the sets right now support 60 frames per second, which is fine for most of the games that are out there. But eventually, it's going to become more mass market with TVs that will have HDMI 2.1 and will be supporting not only variable refresh rates, but the higher frame rates. Those are going to come. You're going to see a few on sale for Black Friday this holiday, but a year from now, it's going to be huge. They're going to all bank on selling you guys new 4K TVs with HDMI 2.1 so you can leverage the power of both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X, right? So this going back to the TV and integrating the applications and getting Xbox Game Pass and the ecosystem into TVs more natively and much more easier. I think that's going to be Microsoft's strategy, and it wouldn't surprise me to see that happen with the relationship with them and Samsung and growing that. And later on, like I said, if they don't want to release their own gaming stick, just write an app that's compatible for either the next iteration of Amazon Fire Stick or the current Google Chromecast stick that I have right now. It's newer technology. It's running a much better processor and much better GPU. But yeah, it's gonna come to a point where if Microsoft didn't want to go down that road and create their own streaming stick, why not create the app officially for those particular platforms, and then anybody with a Bluetooth controller attached to it can now technically play an Xbox game at a very low entry cost, right? So yeah, I think that's definitely in the books. Whether or not that gets officially announced, we'll have to wait and see. I think right now Microsoft is focused on launching the Series X, and they'll talk more about Game Pass and whether it's a streaming stick or other things that they have probably in 2021. I think right now, they're focused on the launch. They're focusing on being competitive against Sony, and Sony's doing the same thing. I think a lot of the things that you're hearing now are going to be talked about in 2021. So we'll have to wait and see, guys. So let me know what you guys think, and post your comments below, and I'll definitely interact with you guys as well. And the last gaming news that I want to talk about, which is I kind of saved the best for last, and it's been making its round in social media. So if you guys don't know, a creative director, his name is Alec Hutchinson for Google Stadia, and he works for one of the Google studios up in Montreal in Canada, and he talked about how streamers need to pay royalties when they're streaming games to developers, or pay some type of a license, right? And for first off, I just want to say what he said, I think, doesn't apply to the environment that's going on right now. It doesn't, and that's why a lot of people are, there's a lot of backlash behind his comments. People are really against it. But I'm gonna give you guys both sides of the story, right? So let's first look at it from his perspective, right? As a director, a creative director, somebody that creates games or, help games get created, right? It's the same thing in the movie field and the music field where there's a lot of creators that make music and make videos and movies, and they make money from their movies. And you know how movies have to have a certain license agreement to kind of be replayed in different platforms. If you stream it again on other platforms, there's licensing agreements. And then look at what happened with music, right? Where a lot of the artists weren't getting the money that they deserve from people utilizing their music for other business ventures. So then the music industry got together, and then they decided to find a mechanism to have artists be paid for the music that's being utilized. That's why in YouTube and other social medias, where if you have influencers or entertainers, you have to get licenses for music. It's copyrighted, right? You have to look at using open source or non-copyrighted materials for your content. So from that perspective, he's looking at that, and he's looking at, well, movies did it, music did it, and the gaming industry is bigger than both movie and games altogether. The gaming industry needs to do the same thing, because he's trying to separate the content from the content creator with the stuff that they're using with the games, right? As a content that's in there. Are people there for the content creator, or are people there for the content, the games that the creator is playing, right? So it's an argument that goes back and forth, but that's his perspective, and I can tell you that's the way he's viewing this from a business perspective. And right now there's a lot of backlash because he's just one guy, and already Google Stadia is already, or Google has distanced themselves. Sorry, it's been a long day. Distanced themselves from him because it's kind of been twisted in a very bad PR light, right? But let me tell you this. I bet you that the gaming industry, if everybody came together, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, all the software developers, and developed a plan where they were able to monetize off of streaming off of games, and they standardize on all that, it would happen. And we had no way to say we don't want to do that. It will happen if they banded together to do so. Right now, they're not doing that, but I can tell you that there's conversations about that, because you think about how Nintendo will copyright strike certain videos on YouTube because it hurts their brand and their record. So it's both ways. You have to understand both ways. A lot of times, the playing of the games and streaming of the games will help a particular company get more advertising, more marketing, but then other times it might be detrimental as well too. So you have to look at both sides of the coin, because if somebody's streaming a game and it prevents somebody else from buying the game because that person's like, I don't want to buy the game. I'm just going to watch this guy beat the game, and that's good enough for me. I don't need to buy the game to play it, right? That's taking away money from the artists, the developers, the publishers that made that game when that entertainer or streamer streams the game, right? But on the flip side of it, if that streamer streams the game and also other people do that, and all of a sudden this game that was not selling well all of a sudden sells really well because people want to play it, then that's great. So right now, the argument that I'm hearing from social media and the people out there is against this, because they're making money off of it. It's benefiting them, so they're going to be very vocal about it, right? So and I totally get that, and I think, and that's why I stated in the beginning of this, is that in the current climate that it is, I think what he stated is going to get a lot of backlash, like it did. It's totally wrong to approach it that way. But it wouldn't surprise me that in a few years, if the collective companies come together, they're gonna find a way to do something very similar to this and to control this. And when they do so, let me just tell you, as consumers, we're going to be subject to whatever system that they put in place. As content creators, as streamers, things like that. So right now, Twitch is huge. And YouTube is huge, right? So with these huge platforms right now that are becoming new ways to reach audiences, these gaming companies are trying to figure out what's a good balance, and I think that's where his comments. I don't think he meant it to state it in that way. I think as I was reading through his comments, like I said, I have to look at it from a gamer perspective. I also have to look at it from a business perspective. I can see where he's coming from, right? I can see where he's coming from because if you, because there's always two sides to every story, and if you talk to a few developers, and I've read a couple of interviews with several developers where their games did not do really well, even though it's garnered great success on social media, on streaming platforms. They didn't really see the uptick in numbers or revenue when it comes to their game sales as they thought they were going to, right? So it's kind of a hit or miss, and I think that's the nature of marketing, and that's the nature of kind of like pop culture in the US and globally, right? It's whatever is entertaining us right now, right? Look at Fall Guys when it came out. So many people were playing Fall Guys, and they were buying it on Steam, and you get it free on iOS. And then it kind of died down a little bit until they kind of re-upped some of their content. They're getting people back to be more engaged. But then, a game like Among Us, where it's also, it's wait, apologies, I mixed Among Us with Fall Guys. Fall Guys is on PlayStation 4 and Steam. Among Us is free on mobile, and Among Us is on Steam as well too. But yeah, those two games, they definitely show that an audience with huge influence can make those games succeed, right? But then what happens to other games out there, right? So it's going to be a select few. It's not going to happen to everyone. But again, it's an interesting talking point that he brought up. I think he went about it the wrong way in terms of expressing it, but I can definitely see his business mentality on what he was thinking and what he was trying to convey. It just doesn't make sense right now because no one's been able to do it correctly. I think, if anything, we would have to leave it to YouTube and Twitch to figure that out. I think right now, the reason why those platforms, YouTube and Twitch, is successful is that streamers have the ability and creators have the ability to do what they want, right? When you have creative freedom, you're able to create really good content. When you're constrained by that, you're not going to create good content. So it's going to be you'll be a little bit more hamstrung. So I thought it was an interesting banter back and forth. Definitely a lot of flack that Alex has gotten, and like I said, rightfully so. I don't think creators and streamers are going to pay a license to play a game. A lot of times, game companies are giving free review codes out to games, out to people to try out and things like that. But yeah, I think and this is one of the things. I don't know if I want to broach this topic right now. Is that when you buy games, both physical and digital, even when you buy a physical game or you buy a physical media and you buy a physical disc of music, you're allowed to use it in your own way because you purchase that, but you're granted a user license, right? So part of that purchase, you're allowed a user license to play that movie, to listen to that music, however, right? But if you read the agreement carefully, you don't own the music itself, right? Because the artist owns the music, the content. The movie, the direct, the company owns the contents of that movie, right? So that's why it's a very tricky situation when it comes to copyright laws and everything like that. And I have a feeling that it's definitely something that the gaming companies have thought about. And to me, I think that it's better for them to meet this new form of entertainment in the middle, because it's not like back in the 90s and 80s where you had marketing teams and you had other ways to market your products. I mean, it's a whole new world now in how you can market your products with content creators, with live streaming, with live services. So I think these companies need to kind of reevaluate that. I know it's always a button-up topic or discussion by all these companies in terms of like how do they monetize with these content creators, and how do they apply the same movie and music model to games. And again, what Alex brought up, it should be a red flag to a lot of people that, hey, the gaming industry is definitely looking at this. They just don't know how to approach it yet. And when they do, just be ready to take the brunt of whatever they decide to put restrictions on, because just as movies and music did, I think gaming is headed that way too. But as long as we can still, create and innovate and create those contents, then hopefully it won't be too bad. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, guys. Post your comments and suggestions, and I will interact with you guys. But yeah, it was a good week of gaming news, a lot of information to kind of recap. But yeah, if you guys like my conversations and discussions in my weekly podcast with just kind of reviewing and recapping the gaming news, giving you guys my opinions and perspective on this, and really approaching a lot of these things that are happening, these topics that are happening in the gaming industry with a little bit more of a business sense. So I'm hoping that it gives you guys a lot of insight for you young up-and-comers that want to get into either the gaming industry or any corporate business or industry, that the topics that I'm bringing up and the approach that I'm bringing on how people, how these companies are going about it will give you guys some insight. So let me know if you guys felt that this podcast was useful. I'll definitely continue to make more. I'm trying to get this released on a regular basis. Have a busy schedule with just work and everything, but I'm trying to see if I can nail this down and either release it every Saturday or every Sunday. So you guys let me know on how you guys normally kind of sit back and relax and listen to the latest gaming news, right, and technology news. So let me know if a Saturday or Sunday would be best to post this on a weekly basis. So if you do that, then I at least know that you've stuck around towards the very end of my podcast to give me that feedback. So if you do, I do appreciate it. If you're new here, go ahead and hit like or dislike if you didn't like the topics that I've discussed, and subscribe if you're a new subscriber. Again, I do this on my spare time. I do this for fun, and I'm not here to try to monetize anything off of YouTube, guys. I just want to enjoy and decompress at the end of the week from my private work with just talking about games and sharing and interacting with the community. So I appreciate the growth that this channel has made in the last week or so, and continue to bring out more content to hopefully expand the community as well. So if you can like, share, comment, whatever, help me out, and I will interact with you as much as I can. All right, guys, have a great week, and I will talk to you guys in a week or so.